Alright, guess what? It's time for another Netflix rom-com. But before you roll your eyes, Love in the Villa stars Tom Hopper, Luther from the Umbrella Academy. So is it any good? After a breakup, a young woman takes a trip to romantic Verona, only to find that the villa she reserved was double booked, and she'll have to share her vacation with a cynical but very good-looking British man. Now, as I said, this stars Tom Hopper along with Kat Graham. Now, Hopper's real-life wife, Laura Hopper, also has a small role in this as well. But the premise is simple, where two people who with seemingly opposite personalities and ideals, they're forced to share a villa that both have rented in a booking mix-up. Now they have to figure out how to get along or maybe even kill each other. But since this is a rom-com, we can pretty much be sure which direction this is going to take. Now, Kat Graham as Julie is shown to be a little high-strung and perpetually clutching for control of every circumstance. She has a plan and wants everything to fall in line according to it. But life's not always that way, so she has to determine if she can share this villa on her dream vacation. Now, Julie's meant to be a bit abrasive at the start, somebody who's wound tightly and believes that having a rigid schedule is what's going to fulfill her. Now, I didn't really find her annoying, though. I mean, she's stressed, or at least so task-oriented that she doesn't feel like she'd be able to just do anything on a whim, but she's still a likable and charismatic character. Tom Hopper as Charlie is meant to be somewhat the opposite of Julie. Now, he's supposed to come off as carefree and less tightly wound, other than what's required of him for his job, which is wine tasting for potential acquisitions. So there's nothing groundbreaking in this rom-com, which I didn't really expect there to be. I mean, what I expect are some chuckles, maybe a few laughs, some amusement at the situations, and then to be enamored at the possibility of the two characters just getting together. Now, this was funnier than I thought it'd be. Hopper has some great timing, and his sarcasm, it really worked for me. While he can come across as a bit of a jerk in moments, Kat Graham does as well. And I liked Julie's reactions to Charlie. Their banter was quick, witty, and it provided a fun dynamic between the two characters. And we expect conflict so that they can fall in love with each other in the midst of that conflict. Now, I appreciate that the antics they get up to aren't mean-spirited. Instead, the pranks they pull on each other are lighthearted and they're pretty tame, but they still put a smile on my face. Now, because this takes place in Italy, we do get some establishing shots of the city and even the countryside, but I really wish that we would have seen even more, especially because Julie is in Verona specifically to take in all the Romeo and Juliet lore. Now, we mainly spend time inside the villa or in the courtyard, where at least we see a balcony that's the fabled one where Juliet speaks to her Romeo. Now, this isn't a huge nitpick for me, but at the beginning of the movie, it's played up at how much Julie wants to explore, and then we don't see much of her exploring. I had mentioned how this was funnier than I thought it'd be, and it's not just because of the actors' timing and their delivery. There are a lot of situations that made me chuckle through this. There's a character named Uberto, and while the humor he brings is predictable, it's still amusing. He's a driver that Julie hires, and let's just say that you really want to wear a seatbelt when you're in the car with him. Now, a lot of the actions are exaggerated, and while they didn't make me laugh out loud, I was smiling with the occasional snicker at Uberto's situations. And this isn't the only circumstance either. I mean, Charlie finds himself in a couple of scenes that are ridiculous, and again, made slightly absurd just in order to create some humor. Now, one sequence with Charlie that is completely unbelievable is that at some point he has to get into the back of Uberto's Fiat 500. Now, Tom Hopper's like 6'4". If you've ever seen the backseat of a Fiat, there is just about zero legroom. I mean, it's unrealistic. Yeah, but who cares? I mean, it was fun to watch, especially given the responses from Julie in the whole situation. Now, when I got ready to watch this, I noticed that it was just short of 2 hours long, which did make me hesitate just a bit and be worried that this is going to overly draw out the story and put in just way too much that's unnecessary to provide us the love story that we're looking for. Now, I was surprised, though, that I didn't really feel the time. The banter and the situations between the two use sequences that are silly and energetic, but then they mix them with more heartfelt or quieter sequences so that the storytelling feels balanced and it didn't drag. This follows the typical romantic comedy plot structure, so nothing is really a surprise in the narrative. Now, the conflict that our characters experience, which is the moment that their burgeoning relationship experiences a complication, it's fairly short-lived and not really drawn out. And this was actually a bit refreshing, especially because it didn't dive too heavily into the drama of what the conflicts really could create. Instead, the story chooses to give us amicable complications to keep us in a happy and hopeful mood despite some hiccups to their potential relationship. I think if you're a fan of rom-coms, then this is an easy watch. It provides some laughs, two leads that are funny and endearing so we want to root for them, and then a story that doesn't outstay its welcome while still infusing a bit of freshness to the genre. The setting of Verona where two people fall in love despite them not being supposed to, just like Romeo and Juliet, it's a great backdrop for a love story. So overall, Love in the Villa is a predictable entry in the romantic comedy genre. But thanks to the humorous, witty, and endearing performances from Cat Graham and Tom Hopper, both the romance and the comedy work to create a story that's touching and pleasing. The film doesn't do anything spectacularly new or novel, but it does use the Romeo and Juliet story to its benefit, creating a modern parallel narrative without all the dying. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and a tiny bit of violence. I give Love in the Villa 4 out of 5 couches. So where's the most romantic place you've ever been? And if you don't have one, where do you think you'd like to go? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.